This project is about 7 years in development, and it's coming to the end of it. And the premise of the project was initially to look at contemporary soldiers, in particular in Afghanistan or Iraqi war. So that's when I began. And so I was looking at contemporary soldiers, trying to have a understanding, trying to capture their voice, but looking at the black perspective. Because at the time, in terms of information that I found out there in terms of the media, as graphic, as informative, and you know what was played out in the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars, I at the time didn't see or hear the black voice perspective, or black soldiers that fought for the British, or stationed in the British Armed Force. So that was my start of that was my prompt, and that was my start of my research.
Was there a specific reason why you were interested in the war and the soldiers in the first place? Was there no?
Well, a lot of time my interest comes from the internet, social media. At the time, I had an argument. Came from an argument, really. I was having a heated argument with someone, talking about, I don't know, the contribution, soldiers, and it seemed as though it was predominantly white soldiers that was out there fighting for the Brits. And it prompted me to question, is it? And is that their understanding of who's fighting and who is supporting, or who is, I don't know. I mean, I think that was an initial start. And I wanted to find out more, so it's totally by accident. As I said, it's from an argument. And I'm quite impulsive like that, because a lot of my work is looking at conversation and situations today. It's very much time-specific. Even though that one is set in time, it still relates to communities today, or we are living in a construct where war was happening at the time and still is. It became quite difficult to develop that work. I started it, but it was very slow and meticulous. Trying to work with certain agency to introduce me, to get close to, I guess, ex-servicemen and women. So while that was materializing, I decided, I need to go back to history. I mean, I could have gone back further, just to try to understand what I was dealing with. I wanted to look at the First World War. From there, I wanted to explore the British West Indians. That's who I came across. And why the British West Indian? Because it relates to my heritage. Sure. Looking at the then colonial soldiers who fought for king and empire. I always take on projects that where I'm learning and finding out something new. That stimulates me.
So you're actually working from an image there?
Yeah, I'm working from images that I found, source materials from archives, usually public archives, personal archives, or even just recently I found images on eBay.
Really?
Yeah. The typical kind of vintage postcards.
Yeah.
So I go through archives. I'm a scavenger for information. So I'll go through historical, public archives, such as the Imperial War Museum, the National Army Museum. So I will, buy an image, high res, identify an image in their archive, buy the image, high res, and then I work from there.
So you buy it as a digital file?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then print it out on a lot of formats.
So is that a printout from something?
That's a printout. So I have I never know what I may find. So location is very much important to my research in terms of, started with archives in the UK, but it's managed to move to the Caribbean and even in the States. The Library of Congress is another space to find images. There's not a lot of them.
Do you know specifically what you're looking for, or is it kind of you have an idea and then it's just chance finds?
I think that it's usually that's the case. I'm looking for black soldiers that have contributed to the British war efforts. So over 7 years, I've developed, I think to date, 27 works from the Shock and Awe series of works, and working from archival materials. So the works looks at the contribution of and the representation of the black soldiers within the First World War, moved on to the Second World War, and just a bit of a leakage into the contemporary soldiers. That is part of the work that I'm yet to pick up again, and I will pick it up.
The contemporary?
Yeah. It's just a matter of time. I will possibly take it up again. And I often do that. I will put a project down for a bit, and over some time, years, I'll come back. I guess it's like reading a book.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will go back to a book or a literature and revisit and connect with it again, and then it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll do that when the time is right.
When you say 27 works, they're not all wall drawings like this?
Oh, there's 27 works on paper.
Right.
Various size, from large 6'4" to very small, frame pieces. So I work on various formats.
Do you repeat the same image at different scales?
Sometimes there's a lot of recycling because there's not a lot of reference material, and I don't mind that. As long as they are here, I've brought them into the mainstream. It's working from photographs, but also it's not about the photograph. It's more about the reference that I'm trying to bring to life. I work in a very traditional way. Simple, traditional materials.
So this is all charcoal?
This is charcoal, yeah. It's accessible. And also I'm interested in the hierarchy of materials. I'm also interested in the work in terms of marginalized communities. In terms of pencil drawing, within the contemporary constructs, they often fall after paintings, painting or new media. And I just thought working with that material kind of sit parallel with what I'm trying to say.
And then more accessible materials as well, I guess.
Yeah. Also, with the wall drawing and a lot of the works, except for the works, smaller works on paper, in this one, it's about power. I like to. They're large. They're very much to seduce the whole audience. They are claiming a space, giving them a voice. So you imagine you're taking these unknown individuals and they're here. They're signposts. It's like you're walking into an antechamber, you meet them, you greet them, and you leave with them.
I mean, he's much bigger than life size. How have you gone from getting a small image? Do you use like a projector or something to scale it up?
I'd rather not say.
Is that a secret?
I'd rather not say.
What about the mark making? I mean, is that instinct? I'm impressed that you're working now whilst talking.
Well, a lot of these places, you know where they are in my head. I know where, in terms of the form and placing of things. After a while, once I'm stopped talking to you, I'll probably work from this. I just love drawing. It's one of the only one of them, that I can express myself with. It is a communication tool. And I'm also thinking about my audience when I'm making a work. It's also a strategy to entice, to seduce, to act like a catalyst in terms of having a conversation. I guess I'm interested in terms of these works, the confrontation of these works, and when confronted with these images, what experience are we observing? How do we? I'm also interested in, bringing these works to the surface, mainstream, in terms of certain generations, like younger generation. How do they engage with it? So there's a lot of things going on in the work. It's also, I guess, it's about me, presence. I'm very much in the work.
You mean in the marks you're making?
The marks, they're me, they're there.
Do you feel at the end of it like you really have got to know this person?
Yeah, kind of. Even though he's anonymous. I mean, I've reproduced him, talking about recycling. I've gotten to know him, and if I don't know him, I imagine who he could be. I kind of do. I go through a process where I even give him a name.
Really?
Yeah, so that I can connect. Because in other works, I've worked from the figure on and off for many years. And usually when I work with a model, at first there's a process. I don't know them. But you get to know your model. You get to know what the back of the neck is like, the ears. And each ears is different to another person. So you go through this process and eventually you get to know them. There's a sense of trust. Someone, giving their body to you to work with. There is that relationship that excites me. I love that kind of. There's a trilogy that happens between the sitter, the surface, and me. There is that in it, with this, I guess, but it's totally different because I'm working from a photograph. I do not know the person, but after a while, I get to know. As I said, I reproduced him a few times now.
What's his name?
That's personal, I can't say. But I do give him a name. Because they become like, they're coming like, to me, like children. For instance, you start with a blank wall. You create these monolith drawings. You feed them, you give them love for so many months, weeks, and then I let them go. I remove the work.
How do you remove it?
just with plain water.
You just wash the wall?
Yeah, but that act and that symbol is a political statement that I'm making about how these individuals or experiences have been wiped away from history. There's a subtlety to it, but also a lot of my work tread within the political lens. A lot. Very much so.
And this exhibition, it's a four-woman exhibition examining themes of protest and remembrance, so it's actually, it fits your work on both levels, I guess.
Yeah, it does.
Do you see any element of protest, or is it more an act of remembrance?
I think it's
or is it protesting against the way that history presents a one-sided view?
It has all those elements to it. It's protest, it's about agency, it's a quiet activism I play in my work. It's about remembrance as well, honouring, celebrating. So yeah, all those aspects.
Once this has been washed off, is there any record of it at all, or is it, I mean, do you take photographs? Do you?
The photos are taken, and I allow the public to take photos because we live in the age of the technology, and within that, it's uploaded, hopefully, it lives there. So it's creating, I guess, another archive of the work. But also, it lives on in the memory, the minds of those who visit the work. And I like that tension. I want the audience to remember it. Even though it's not a permanent piece, and it's, from the moment I make the first mark, I've already said goodbye. So it's not about being precious at all. It's about making a statement, a strong statement within the work.